Probably this phenomenon has a scientific justification, a clever name and other attributes. We are talking about a surprising, strange attraction of opposites. Domestic, pure, shy young ladies to obvious hooligans, semi-bandit personalities and just criminals. About this wrote scientists, psychologists, poets, novelists in their scientific works, poems and novels. Opposites attract. One and only one can say in justification of such connections, which almost never end well, and rarely without severe consequences. Such was the misfortune that happened to Olenka, a home girl, still practically a teenager of 14, the daughter of a scientific worker and a kindergarten teacher. The thing is that Nina Vasilyevna in the summer went with her pupils to a Dasha village near the city, where there was a camp from their kindergarten. She had service housing, food, salary, plus paid holiday pay and bonuses. Of course, her daughter came with her. Her husband came only on weekends. The rest of the time he lived in a city flat. Olechka was under supervision together with Mum's pupils. She hung around in the company of teenagers from 8 and older, among whom there were also local boys and girls besides summer dakniks. Some of them spent their time in half-childish amusements, cinema in the local club at daytime sessions, night expeditions for apples in other people's orchards, evenings sitting on stadium benches with scary stories about a nut screwed into the floor, kikimores, foresters, and mermaids. The other part, older, preferred amusements much less harmless, vulgar verses to the guitar, heartbreaking songs about unhappy love, about a young thief and a scoundrel prosecutor, about an old mother. Here they smoked cigarettes, pulled wine from the neck. Boys secretly touched girls by the knees, hugged them by the shoulders, and they pretended to fight back with all their might. That summer it so happened that Olya was left without her usual company. It was already boring with juveniles. There were no girls of suitable age. And the semi-blatnoy company, on the one hand, beckoned with taboo, on the other, frightened by a clear challenge to all her hothouse, serene life. Vityok or Vityuka was the leader of this company, a tall, bold, self-confident guy, a complete authority for the local gang and even home guys. He smoked openly, drank not some sour drink, but strong port wine, in case of what he fought to the hilt, could go against even a strong man, or 2 or 3 guys of his age. Of course he was an idol for the boys, and an object of admiration for several girls from his circle. There were usually only 2 or 3 of them. The company was mostly male. At the same time, he sang blat songs from prison folklore in such a way that not only his entourage, but even the occasional adult audience listened. Vitya had a good ear, a pleasant voice, and besides, he sang so heartily and sincerely that it was impossible not to believe that he himself had not experienced it. It is hard to say why their company thinned then, especially in the girls' part. A few adorers of small age, which Vityuka was not interested in, and a couple of girls a couple of years older than him, who had passed the Crimea and Rim, who gladly drank Kreplyak, and then were ready for anything. But the guy, although he sometimes took advantage of their weakness, did not consider personally their closest friends. They were just casual connections out of boredom. That day Vityok's group sat on a bench at the exit of the park, or rather, practically on the street. The younger boys went to smoke in the bushes, not really hiding, just observing a certain ritual, while Vityok smoked openly on the bench. Olechka went to the shop on behalf of her mother to buy some groceries. She passed by the cackling company without much fear. Vityok's domestic brotherhood did not touch them unnecessarily. She walked on and on, not paying attention to the boys and their leader, but suddenly he looked at her intently, and catching the return look, suddenly smiled broadly and cheerfully. "Hello, beautiful." It was said quite peacefully, politely, without mockery. "Hello." The girl lowered her gaze. There were no more events. Vitya said nothing, and his henchmen kept silent all the more. There was no command to poison a clean, homely girl, and it was not customary to take the initiative in such communities. Olya came back with her shopping the same way. But there was no one on that bench. The company had left the place on their own unknown business. At the next meeting the guy greeted her as an old acquaintance, smiling even wider, and more sincerely. "Ah, What a smile he had. Olya involuntarily succumbed to this magic, and smiled back. The next time he met her at the shop, walked beside her, entertaining her with all sorts of funny and not at all vulgar tales. Soon these meetings became daily and habitual, and when Vitya suddenly disappeared for a few days, Olya literally all exhausted. The guy also unexpectedly appeared, met her, saw her off, left unanswered the question of where he was going, only smiled his marvelous charming smile. With this and began their relatively adult relationship. More Vitya did not hide from prying eyes, rightly fearing that he would be suspected of bad intentions. The young people just sat openly on a bench in the park, then moved to a bench near Ollie's house, then settled down in the garden, then on the veranda of their house, in the kitchen, and finally in Ollie's room. Olin's mother was shocked, but she couldn't make any claims. The boys just sat and talked, sometimes drinking tea. No matter how hard she tried to catch them off guard, she could not do anything. The young people always observed decorum. They did not even hold hands, let alone more. When one day she decided to have a frank conversation with her daughter, she, who had never objected to her mother, gave her a formidable fight. It turned out that Vitya is very good. No one understands him. Everyone sees him as a bully, expect him to do cruel things and other nasty things. Because he was never loved, his parents abandoned him to his grandmother, disappeared to some unknown place, and his grandmother is old and can't keep track of everything. He says that only Olya understands him, and with her by his side he will be good, he will improve. They have nothing with him. They have not even kissed. They have agreed to wait until they come of age. They love each other truly, but he will not offend her, nor will he demand any action. Nina Vasilievna, hearing all this nonsense that the bully had put in her girl's ears, simply burst into tears. She had a fit of hysteria. When she came to her senses, she hugged her frightened daughter, who had never seen her mother like that before, begged her not to meet Vitya yet, or only to see her once to tell him that her mother was seriously ill and she couldn't leave her. The day after tomorrow is Saturday. Her father will come. They will talk. Then they will make a decision. With great reluctance Olya made such a promise, but warned that she would not make any decisions about breaking up with Vitya. Before Saturday, Nina made some inquiries. Strangely enough, almost everything Olya had said about Vitya turned out to be true. He really lived with his old grandmother. His parents had really disappeared and took no part in the boy's life. Nobody even knew if they were alive. On Saturday, Olin's father arrived and they talked, first with his mother alone and then with Olya. Nina Vasilievna insisted that she absolutely forbade the girl to meet with this bandit and hooligan, as she put it. He's a criminal. Not only will he go to jail himself, but he will drag our girl with him. How's he gonna drag her down with him? Why force her? He'll persuade her, force her, I don't know. But he hasn't been caught doing anything like that yet, has he? You want him to kill someone or rob someone, don't you? And then Olya and him will be prosecuted for complicity, Nina exclaimed. I don't need it, but tell me, how will you forbid her? I'll talk to her, she'll understand. Nina, what are you doing out of the moon? I'll talk to her, she'll understand. First of all, she's at that age, she's against everything. And secondly, in love, not critical perception of everything that concerns her beloved. You're the one who fell from the moon, Gina. What love, what perception, it's all rubbish. All right. If you don't believe she won't listen to me, talk to her yourself. You're the father. She won't listen to me either. So I should just wash my hands of it. What's the point? Let them meet within themselves, but under control, in front of you. We need to talk too. They called their daughter, but they didn't have a chance to talk. Olya stubbornly said one thing. We love each other. Vitya is good. He will not hurt me. In the end, with great difficulty, they squeezed out of her a promise not to do anything stupid and to wait until she came of age. True love knows how to endure and wait. Mum spoke loftily, quoted some poem, told a story from a book. Dad nodded, but he hoped that soon September would come, his wife and daughter would return to town, and all Ollie's bliss would pass. out of sight and out of mind. The time of departure came, and the daughter became quite uncontrollable. She cried, threw tantrums, shouted that she would not go anywhere, let them transfer her to the local school. Still, she was persuaded. They bought her a good smartphone, allowed her to communicate with Vitya, occasionally checked their rather rare and innocent correspondence, not knowing that Olya had set up a fake account and there was a completely different correspondence. At the end of December, Olya disappeared. She simply did not come home after school, although she was present at classes. Nina Vasilievna wanted to report her to the police, but Gennady forbade it. Look carefully. Many of her things are not there. No one kidnapped her. She left on her own and I can guess where. I'm going after her tomorrow. Why tomorrow? Go right now. I have to make an arrangement with Grisha. He's got a car and an ID. Grisha was an old relative of Gina's, a tough guy who worked in the security service. He had at his disposal a sturdy SUV UAZ, and most importantly, serious crusts, which could easily pass for a cop's. She didn't know how they agreed with the relative, but the next day the men left for that very dacha village. As you might expect, the guys were at Vitya's grandmother's house. By that time, the old lady had already died, and the house was at the grandson's complete disposal. The men burst inside, twisted the guy, who fought back desperately, and squirmed only when he saw Grisha's ID card. That's it, boy, you're finished, Grigory said, puffing himself up. You'll go to the adult system now, you're already 18. And you know what happens for seducing a minor. Don't you dare say that, Olya shouted. No one kidnapped me or seduced me. I came to Vita's house by myself. These words almost made Papagena sick. He took Olya into another room and told her to confess everything. The daughter burst into tears and said that it was her initiative. Between them nothing had happened yet, although they were on the verge of it. The father felt bad again, but he realized in time that nothing had happened. Then he went into the next room, and he and Grisha once again warned the guy about the serious consequences, noting that even for an attempted seduction can get a serious sentence, and left, taking Olya with him. And in January Vitya sent her a short message. I'm sorry, my love, they will come for me soon. I'm not guilty of anything. I was just there, but everything will be blamed on me. You wait, I'll be out soon. Maybe they'll give me a suspended sentence. Vitya was not given a suspended sentence. He had already turned 18. Before that, he had a juvenile case. He behaved defiantly, did not admit guilt, and eventually got 3 years in a penal colony and left under escort. Olya turned black with grief, screamed, was hysterical, and when her mother reminded her, as she claimed that Vitya was good and incapable of crime, almost with fists pounced on her and shouted that Vitya was not guilty of anything, he was framed. He nobly took the blame. And she would wait for him. They would get married, have children and live happily ever after. And other naive nonsense that silly fools hear from their criminals. Olya waited for her Vitya all 3 years, with none of the guys not making not only relationships, but also just a walk did not allow herself. She finished school, entered the institute. Vitya will go out, will get married, I'll get a diploma, I'll earn good money, he will also study, find a normal job. And now it was time for him to be released. Vitya came to his village, wrote to Ola, and said that there was no need to go to him, he would come to the city himself. She waited for this meeting with trepidation, put on her best dress, asked her girlfriend, who was leaving for a few days, for the key to her flat, realizing that this time they would have everything in a mature way. She was 18 now too, and she had saved her innocence for her lover. Olya ran to the place before time, fidgeting, constantly looking at her watch, and finally her Vitya. She wanted to rush towards him, to hug him, to press herself against his chest, but she stopped halfway. It was not her Vitya at all. Or rather he was, but a stranger. A stranger. His short hair was unwashed, greasy, disheveled, ungroomed stubble growing on his cheeks and chin. His clothes were dirty, wrinkled, torn in some places. He smelled of booze and cheap cigarettes. The girl involuntarily recoiled and took a step back. Hello, beautiful. The guy grinned crookedly. I see that you don't like me. You thought that I would come from the sanatorium, clean, ironed, fragrant with cologne. No, my dear, I wasn't in a sanatorium. Come to me, we'll hug and kiss. It's been a long time since we've seen each other. Terrified, Olya took another step back. She imagined herself in the arms of this dirty, unkempt man. It was clear that he had not come from the sanatorium, but 3 days had already passed and it would be possible to wash, change clothes, put oneself in order, not to get drunk on joy after release. Was he not able to become better, cleaner, even for her sake? He valued more this very thief's romance, contempt for the girl she loved and, as she hoped, the girl she loved. Where is her Vitya? Where is her beloved? She took another step back, shaking her head from side to side, as if answering herself, no. What happened to us? He asked mockingly. Love's gone and the tomatoes have wilted? No, darling, that's not the way things are done. I was waiting for you too, you know, and you made vows to me saying, I love you, I'll buy you a tram. I waited for 3 years. I called all my mates, saying my beloved was waiting for me on the outside. I came to my beloved and it was a bummer. She didn't want Vityuka as he is, she wanted a noble one. I'm joking. Come to me, pretty girl, give me a hug and a kiss. We'll buy wine, fruit, go to my house, spend a night like a grown-up, like I've been dreaming of for 3 years. Olya wanted to move further away, but Vitya quickly stepped towards her, grabbed her arm, pulled her sharply to him, breathing a vile breath of booze. No, let go, I don't want to, leave me alone. You don't want to? Do you know what they call that in the penitentiary? Rotten bazaar, and you know what a rotten bazaar is too? Let go of the girl. Victor was yelling so loud he didn't hear 3 guys come up to them. He wanted to snap at them, but he realized in time that he might get in trouble. The guys were fit, well-trained, muscular. He stepped back, spat angrily. Okay, our meeting didn't work out, but I remember everything. I don't forget. Bye, gorgeous. He squinted angrily, started to walk away, then turned his back and walked away, shoving his hands in his pockets and whistling something from Prison Chanson. The guys surrounded the crying girl, took her to a bench. One of them ran to the nearest stall and bought a bottle of mineral water. Another guy wanted to catch up with the scoundrel, but he was stopped by the third of the company. Leave it, Dennis, don't get involved. He might have a knife. With evident reluctance, he agreed. The guys crowded round the girl, calmed her down, gave her something to drink. Soon Olya calmed down a little, though she continued to shiver nervously. The guys tried to entertain her a little, and when they saw that she almost came to her senses, they began to offer to escort her home. She refused, but the situation was taken into his own hands by Dennis, who wanted to catch up with Vitya, and said that he would walk her home himself. There was no point in the whole crowd coming under the windows and scaring her parents. The friends looked at each other understandingly and left them alone. Vitya understood that now Olya was under the reliable protection of strange guys, so he decided to go home to the village, to wash, shave, change his clothes, come back the next day and make another attempt at reconciliation. But when he arrived, he drank port straight from the bottle in the park with some boys he didn't know. Then he met his mates and girls from his old company. And then it got really intense. I came to my senses only in a fortnight. Threw the whole crowd out of the house, heated the sauna, kicked out the hops. I shaved, cleaned up, and went into town. Ollie wasn't home. Her flatmate said she'd gone out with Dennis, but it wouldn't be too late, as she had a test tomorrow. He sat down on a bench at the exit from the courtyard and waited, growing angry. She had gone with Dennis, you see. All right, I'll show Dennis to you. He no longer wanted any reconciliation. He wanted only one thing, revenge. Olya arrived about 8 o'clock in a taxi. Dennis's car had broken down. He stopped the taxi for the girl, knowing that it was time for her to get her textbooks, and sent her to his place. He fixed the car quickly enough and wanted to go home, but he was worried why Olya didn't call, that she had got there safely. They had such an agreement. I dialed her number, but the phone was silent. Strange. Usually the girl never ignored these calls. With increasing anxiety he turned round and drove to Olya's house. There he learned from the neighbors that Olya had been attacked when she was approaching her driveway. Some young guy had hit the girl on the head with a stone, and an ambulance had taken her away. Uncle Vasya, a neighbor, jumped on the bandit, preventing him from striking a second blow, which he received but only tangentially. The bandit was rounded up, the police arrived, and Dennis rushed to the hospital to see Ola. That year, the boys finally managed to get away on a real holiday. They fought to get their holidays in the golden month of July, and went to the southern coast, renting a house from a nice woman owner. The weather was as ordered, warm, sunny, windless. They sunbathed, bathed, raced along the paths, ate fruit in unimaginable quantities, and enjoyed life to the full. One morning she and her son left Dennis, who wanted to sleep at home, went to the beach themselves, and having bathed and starved, were walking home when Olya was suddenly called. She turned round and saw a man about her age, stocky, with a scar on his cheek, vaguely reminding her of someone. Could it be Vitya? She went cold, stepped back, covering her son. He noticed her movement, grinned understandingly, made a soothing gesture with his hand. Don't be afraid, Olya. I'm different now. Please forgive me for everything, and understand that I've really become different. They gave me 8 years, and I began to realize that I was living my worthless life for nothing, neither pitying myself nor people. Anyway, I won't tell you about it, but I changed a lot then. I became an activist. My former mates even wanted to stab me. He grinned and stroked his scar. In general, I was granted 2 years of parole. I had written to one of my correspondence students, Valya, and came to see her. We got married. Now I'm an honest worker. Valya and I take holidaymakers on holiday. I work as a chauffeur. Don't think I don't need anything from you. I'm very glad I met you. I could ask for forgiveness. I won't bother you. I'm leaving. He turned and went towards a small house under a tiled roof, at the gate of which a woman in a white shawl was waiting for him. Strangely enough, after this meeting, Olya did not become afraid that the past would return. For some reason she believed Vita, but she did not want to see him, tried not to go near his house. When they arrived home, Olya uploaded photos from the holiday to her profile, and received a lot of likes and enthusiastic comments. Among them were letters from Vitya. He found her online, because she signed her profile with her real name. Once again he apologized and offered friendship. For a second the woman hesitated, even moved the mouse cursor to press the accept button. Then, as if waking up from her morose state, she decisively clicked, refuse. She thought about it and blocked her profile with a warning. Profile blocked. If you have any questions, please contact your husband. Friends and acquaintances will find it, she decided, but let the rest of us go. She exhaled happily, shook her head, and went to feed dinner to her men.